Chapter 5. A Taste of His World. I need you to understand something, Julian said as they stood outside the imposing oak doors of the Maltnana Whiska Library. The building looked like a cathedral dedicated to alcohol, all dark stone and leaded glass windows that promised mysteries within. This place is important to me. Chloe shifted uncomfortably in the dress she'd borrowed from her roommate. A simple black number that felt foreign after days of construction site meetings in jeans and work boots. It's a bar, Julian. I think I can handle it. It's not just a bar. His hand hovered over the brass door handle, hesitating. It's where I learned that what we do can be art. Where I first understood that precision and passion don't have to be mutually exclusive. The vulnerability in his voice caught her off guard. This wasn't the arrogant mixologist she'd sparred with at the competition or the perfectionist who'd argued with her over every design detail. This was someone sharing something sacred. Okay, she said simply, show me. The interior took her breath away despite her determination not to be impressed. Dark wood paneling stretched from floor to ceiling, punctuated by thousands of bottles that gleamed like amber jewels in the soft lighting. The air was thick with the scent of aged whiskey and leather, and every surface seemed to whisper stories of craftsmanship and time. Holy shit, Chloe breathed, then immediately felt embarrassed by her language in such a reverent space. Julian's mouth quirked in what might have been amusement. That was my exact reaction the first time I came here. I was 24, cocky as hell, and thought I knew everything about spirits. The bartender, Marcus, he's worked here for 15 years, served me a pour of something I'd never heard of and told me to taste it properly. They moved deeper into the library, passing couples speaking in hushed tones and solitary drinkers contemplating their glasses like philosophers. The atmosphere was church-like, but not stuffy, more like a place where people came to worship something beautiful and complex. What do you mean, taste it properly? Chloe found herself matching his lowered voice without conscious thought. Here! Julian guided her to a quiet corner where tall shelves created an intimate alcove. Let me show you. He signaled to the bartender, a woman in her 40s with silver-streaked hair and knowing eyes, who approached with the kind of quiet efficiency Chloe recognized from years in the service industry. Evening, Julian. It's been too long. Elena, I'd like you to meet my business partner, Chloe. We're working on that project I mentioned. Elena's gaze sharpened with interest as she looked between them, clearly picking up on the tension that seemed to follow them everywhere. Ah, the famous anarchist. Your reputation precedes you. Chloe winced. Please tell me that ridiculous nickname hasn't made it here. Honey, this is Portland. That article made you a folk hero among half our regulars and a cautionary tale among the other half. Elena grinned. What can I get you? Julian looked at Chloe questioningly. Do you trust me? It was a loaded question given their history, but something in his expression, earnest, almost hopeful, made her nod. 2 pours of the Yamazaki 18, Julian said, and maybe some of those chocolate truffles if you have them. Elena raised an eyebrow. Starting with the good stuff, I see, I'll be right back. When she returned with 2 glasses containing barely an ounce each of amber liquid, Chloe had to suppress a laugh. $40 for a shot? This better be life-changing. It's not a shot, Julian said seriously. And yes, it might be. He picked up his glass, cradling it between his palms. First, warm it slightly with your hands. The heat releases aromatic compounds that… Julian. Chloe's voice was gentle but firm. Just show me. You don't have to explain the science. Something in his shoulders relaxed. He lifted the glass to his nose, inhaling deeply, his eyes closing with an expression of pure pleasure. When he opened them, the intensity there made her stomach flutter. Now you. Chloe mimicked his movements, bringing the glass to her nose. The aroma hit her immediately. Complex layers of fruit and spice and something indefinably sophisticated. She'd expected harsh alcohol burn, but instead found herself breathing deeper, chasing scents she couldn't name. Oh, she said softly. Now taste it. Just a sip. Let it coat your tongue. The whiskey was nothing like the shots she was used to. No burn, no bite, just waves of flavor that seemed to evolve as she held it in her mouth. Honey and oak, vanilla and smoke, finishing with warmth that spread through her chest like liquid sunlight. This is… She struggled for words. I get it now. Why you do what you do. Julian's smile transformed his entire face, erasing the careful control he usually maintained. This is what I'm trying to recreate in cocktails. Not just the flavors, but the experience. The moment when someone discovers something they didn't know existed. They sat in comfortable silence, sipping their whiskey while the library hummed quietly around them. Chloe watched Julian's face as he tasted, noting the way his expression shifted with each sip, the almost meditative concentration he brought to the experience. Can I ask you something? She said finally. Of course. Why does your family hate what you do so much? Julian's glass stilled halfway to his lips. For a moment, she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he sighed, a sound that seemed to come from somewhere deep inside. Because to them, service is servitude. Manual labor is beneath our family name. His voice was matter-of-fact, but she caught the underlying pain. My father is a federal judge. My mother sits on the boards at 3 museums and a symphony orchestra. My sister is a surgeon, and I make drinks for a living. You create experiences. You're an artist. Not in their eyes. In their eyes, I'm a 32-year-old man playing dress-up in a job that teenagers do to pay for college. The bitterness in his voice made her chest ache. That's their loss. Julian looked at her sharply, as if surprised by her vehemence. You don't understand. These are people who've spent generations building a reputation, a legacy. My choice reflects on all of that. Bullshit. The word came out sharper than she'd intended, drawing glances from nearby tables. She lowered her voice. Your choice reflects on you, your talent, your passion, your dedication to something beautiful. If they can't see that, they're idiots. Chloe. No, I'm serious. You know what I see when I watch you work? I see someone who cares so much about perfection that he'll spend hours perfecting a single drink. Someone who treats every cocktail like it matters because the person drinking it matters. She leaned forward, her eyes fierce. That's not servitude, that's art. Something shifted in Julian's expression, surprise giving way to something rawer, more vulnerable. The carefully maintained distance he kept between himself and the world seemed to crack, revealing the man underneath the facade. You don't know what that means to me, he said quietly. I think I do. The space between them seemed charged with electricity, the intimate corner of the library suddenly feeling too small to contain what was building. Julian set down his glass with deliberate care, his eyes never leaving hers. Chloe. Her name on his lips sounded different than it ever had, not frustrated or annoyed, but almost reverent. When he reached out to touch her face, his fingers trembling slightly against her cheek, she didn't pull away. We shouldn't, she whispered, but her body was already betraying her, leaning into his touch. I know. His thumb traced along her jawline and she shivered. But I can't stop thinking about you, about us, about what happens when we stop fighting long enough to actually see each other. Julian. He stood abruptly, extending his hand to her. Come with me. She knew she should say no. They were in public, in his sacred space, surrounded by people who probably knew him professionally. But the intensity in his eyes made rational thought impossible. She took his hand. He led her deeper into the library, past the main seating areas to a section she hadn't noticed before, a narrow corridor lined with rare bottles in locked cases. The lighting was dimmer here, more intimate, and they were completely alone. This is the archive, Julian said, his voice rough. Some of these bottles are over a century old. Irreplaceable. Chloe looked around at the glowing cases, understanding without being told that this was the holy of holies, the most precious part of a place already dedicated to precious things. Why did you bring me here? Instead of answering, Julian pressed her back against the wall between 2 display cases, his body caging her in. The contrast between the priceless whiskey surrounding them and the desperate need in his eyes should have been absurd, but instead it felt perfect, beauty and passion, and the kind of reckless desire that made people do stupid things. Because I want you to understand, he said, his lips inches from hers. This place, this craft, this obsession with perfection, it's all I've had. All I've been able to count on when everything else felt uncertain. And now? Now I think I want something else more. When he kissed her, it was nothing like their previous encounters, no anger, no frustration, no competition. Just pure want, desperate and honest and impossible to deny. Her hands fisted in his shirt as he deepened the kiss, pressing her more firmly against the wall, while bottles worth more than her yearly salary glowed like silent witnesses around them. His mouth moved to her neck, finding the spot that made her gasp, and her legs went weak. Only his body pinning her to the wall kept her upright as he worked magic with his lips and tongue, mapping the sensitive places that made her breath catch. God, Chloe? He breathed against her throat. I can't think straight when you're around. Then don't think, she managed, her fingers working at the buttons of his shirt. For once in your life, just feel. That seemed to break whatever restraint he'd been maintaining. His hands roamed her body with increasing urgency, finding the zipper of her dress and sliding it down with practiced efficiency. The whiskey library around them felt like a cathedral to something sacred and forbidden, and they were about to defile it in the most beautiful way possible. If someone comes back here, Julian started. Then we better be quiet, Chloe finished, pulling him down for another kiss that tasted like expensive whiskey and dangerous decisions. Later, when they were both breathing hard and trying to reassemble their clothes with shaking hands, Chloe looked around at the priceless bottles glowing in their cases and started to laugh. What? Julian asked, still trying to straighten his tie. I just fucked someone against a wall in a whiskey library. A month ago, the most expensive drink I'd ever had was a $20 bottle of wine. Julian's mouth quirked upward. And now? Now I'm wondering if all your fancy places are this much fun when you're breaking the rules. His laugh was rich and genuine, free of the careful control she was used to hearing. Chloe Martinez, you are going to be the death of my reputation. Good, she said, rising on her toes to kiss him once more. Your reputation could use some killing. As they made their way back through the library, nodding politely to Elena, who gave them a knowing look, Chloe realized something had fundamentally shifted between them. The whiskey, the vulnerability, the way Julian had shared something precious with her, it had changed the dynamic from pure antagonism to something far more dangerous. Something that felt almost like partnership.